Hello and welcome to Conscious TV. My name is Renate McNay, and in the studio with me today is Mandi Solk. Hello, Mandi.
Hello, Renate.
Mandi wrote a beautiful book, The Joy of No Self, and it's actually a joy to read this book.
Thank you.
And I had a good laugh as well.
Oh, good. Good. That's very important.
Mandi speaks about non-duality, and she was here with us in the past.
Yeah.
And in the past, you were saying that there is nothing we can do to wake up.
Yes.
And now you completely
Changed
around
completely.
and changed completely,
Yeah.
and we are all curious what we can do to wake up.
Well, what happened before for me was that there'd been a lot of awakenings. Now, awakening isn't liberation, and awakenings actually can get in the way because, so for instance, an awakening is that I've written about and some people have heard about is that I had a car crash with a motorbike and I was taken out and I just let go and I was taken out my body, and then as I sort of had the feeling of rising upwards, I could suddenly see through people and see through buildings, and I lost all fear of death, and there was an intense seeing that the world that I had taken to be so real, wasn't as it seemed.
That's a huge thing, man.
Well, it was yes, that's
no
right.
fear of death all of a
Yes.
sudden, and
Well, it was a huge thing at the
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
and then a few years later, there was I'd had a very tricky operation and died on the operating table. Not for long, obviously. But there was a sort of another rising up and seeing through everything, and even more that intensified that seeing through the dream. And then there was various things, with sometimes, a few years apart. It wasn't that they were all bump, bump, bump.
But it seems that it always happened in a dramatic, through dramatic circumstances.
Well, not always. Sometimes I was simply turning over in bed, and I realised it was that I was see-through and there was nobody turning in bed. Or there was one day, another in bed one was waking up in the morning and realising that it was way past an out-of-body experience. There just wasn't anybody there. There was no Mandi, or that character just didn't exist, and I had to sort of, get dressed and walk to places, and people were talking to me, and it was as if they were trying to find me, and I couldn't even find myself to speak back. So
how did this affect you, these experiences?
Well, you see, this is the thing, and I suppose this is why I've come back to talk about this, is because when you have these kind of experiences, first of all, as soon as you start talking about them, people who are listening think, oh, well, if I haven't had these experiences, then I'm never going to understand what it is to awaken. And that's just not true. Mm-hmm. Also, when you have these experiences, they're so intense and powerful that you are tricked into believing that somehow you've seen it all now. You've seen the answer to everything. You've seen the breakdown of the identity, and you've seen liberation. But you see, the mind is very tricky, and so what that can make you believe, I'm sorry, this will be a conversation where I'm jumping forward and then I will come back.
Yeah.
Because it's the minute that you start speaking, it becomes a concept, it becomes conceptual.
Sure.
And I'm coming from a spaciousness which it's hard to just sometimes make that leap to put it into words, and one of the things I want to do is be very, very clear, because the only feeling that there is here is freedom for everybody. Now, when we go and we do these non-duality talks and we say, there's nobody here, there's nothing you can do,
Which was your experience.
It was my experience,
Yes.
and I concurred with that, so I said the same thing, because
Yeah.
that seemed to be the case. But then over the years, I saw that liberation hadn't happened in the way that I thought, and it wasn't staying there, and there was some in and out. And, you know, I think some people have these awakenings and then speak about it too early. And I think, you know, I want to be honest and say that I think I was one of these people, held my hand up,
So can
that
we
spoke
say,
about it too early.
so but we can say you knew the truth, but you did not feel liberated yet.
No, not in any long-term sense.
Yes.
But I thought I did. Now, this is what I mean, so I want to be really clear. This is what I mean about how awakening can get in the way. If you have even one awakening, so your awakening is that you see you are not who you think you are, nor is anybody else who they think they are. It's like a dream, this whole body, this whole world. It's a dream from your perspective. Yes, it's a great thing to see. But then what happens is, there's nothing, you haven't got any more questions. There's no more seeking because you've already seen.
Yes.
But then, that having seen and having no more questions means that you stop looking. Now, it's not enough actually just to see through this. If you then keep going back so strongly into personality, something has to happen whereby you cut through all the, you know, the rubbish, you know, you cut through it all. And so what happened was that I had started Non-Duality North and was inviting lots of non-dual teachers. And I was having these awakenings as well before that and during that time and everything. But I started to see, Renate, that the people that were coming to the meetings were coming time and time again. And I didn't see any change myself. I didn't really see anybody. They kept needing to come back time and time again.
Yeah, but they argue, I understand what you say, but they argue that there isn't anybody there who can change something. You see,
Well,
for
yes.
example, before you came, I interviewed somebody. She, for example, said awakening is the first step, but then you have to clear up the whole world, because the whole world is you.
That's it.
Yeah.
I am 100% in agreement with that.
Yeah.
That is exactly what I'm coming to.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm coming to. That's spot on.
Yeah.
You know, that's said beautifully.
So you still felt, after some years
Yeah.
of teaching and actually discouraging people to look at themselves, because you thought by looking at oneself that emphasizes your ego structure.
I said that even remember saying here that yes, you know, looking, doing all this self-inquiry. Well, who's doing the self-inquiry? Who's doing that, I'd say. And, you know, and this is a thing. There's an awful lot of people who talk about non-duality say, well, who's doing the looking? But the whole point is about self-inquiry is that it's not a personality, it's not a person that's doing the looking, it's consciousness itself. Consciousness, I am, that I am presence, that we are, the I am of our being, just wants to see itself. Its only reason for being is to see itself, and for us to see through the idea that we are not that. So all I can say now, and I'll come back to, I must come back to where we were talking before, I'll bring it back, but all I can say now is not so much I know myself. Well, I can say that, but the other side of it is also true. I know what I am not. But I only know what I am, or know what I am not, through this looking. So I'll just go back to, so there I was, one of these same people, there's nothing you can do, and nobody chooses it, and first of all, that is a very egocentric thing to say. It's without heart, and I didn't realise it at the time because this seemed to be my experience. But then I suddenly saw in one of my sort of contemplations in self-inquiry, well, who do you think showed you what you know anyway? You didn't. Grace showed you. So when we're doing self-inquiry, it's just a slower way of looking. So if you have an instant awakening, it's still, if you like, God or being that's showing itself to itself. Well, so it is with self-inquiry. It's just more of the slow cooking method, you see. Yeah. Anyway, so I started to get very disenchanted with non-duality north and with listening to teachers and talking myself. And I found a flatness among some of the people that I met. And, you know, to be fair, a lot of them stayed with me. And through, not all of them, but through some of them, I experienced a deadness in being with them, a deadness and not an aliveness. And, to be honest, that's what I felt myself too. You know, I felt that something wasn't as alive and joyful. It looked like that on the outside. Now people tell me I look more serious, and yet I'm more joyful on the inside than ever. It's worked the other way around.
I love the expression you used. You said in the email you wrote me, I realized I was only half cooked.
Yes, that's right. Yes, yeah. Half cooked, so half baked. Anyway,
so in the moment you realized that, Mandy, how was that for you?
I realised that I had to change everything. I sold my house because it was in the middle of this area, Hebden Bridge, which, if people don't know, it's a very social, sort of hippie alternative area with loads going on, and and it's a lovely place, but I was just with too many people, and there was this absolute craving to be on my own, really, and just to wipe everything clean and start again. There was this like, it sounds so unhumble to say humility, but that's what it was. It was just this deep humility for being, really, and that I didn't know anything that I thought I did, and I had no right to be saying the things that I was saying. So then I went into a flat, and then I found myself a house that was really, well, in terms of distance, actually it's only half an hour from Hebden Bridge, but it could be like 3 worlds away. It's in a totally different place, very ordinary. It's not hippie or alternative. Nobody knows me there. It was a great place to start this looking. So for 6 months, I just did hours and hours and hours of contemplation. You could call it meditation, but it's more like the self-inquiry is really just, first of all, sitting, recognising yourself as I, existence, pure existence.
So that's the Enquiry, Ramana Maharshi.
Exactly, the Ramana Maharshi, Muji, Papaji, exactly that kind of thing. Yeah. And you know, people like them have spoken about it so much more eloquently than I can, but that's what I did. I just started right from the beginning.
So how does that actually work? So something would come up, I don't know what kind of things? I mean,
anything can
I would
come up.
think if you are on our own somewhere, tucked away in a cave-like house, there is not so much coming up.
Well, all sorts of things come up, you know, because with the mind, it never stops. We're not, I must just say, looking to kill the mind off. The thoughts is energy. It's part of being alive. Thoughts will always be there. It's about not buying the stories, really, just not buying the stories. And also embracing anything that comes up. So, but when something comes up, like, you know, something will come up that somebody's annoyed you or something or whatever, that's great, that person that's annoyed you, because it acts like a scraper. So the first thing that, you know, this is how I worked with it, would be to ask to whom, and this is what Ramana Maharshi says, to whom does that thought arise? So first of all, there's a real deep looking. And I used to be a meditator. I've done many kinds. I've done Vipassana, TM meditation, also lovely. But I have to say, I have to mention them just to show that I've never had any experience of depth like I've had from self-inquiry. That's deeper than anything I could ever call meditation. It goes so deeply into being. And then it's like you're using the I am tool. So let me just go back. So if things come up that are upsetting you, rather than, we're not trying to suppress anything here. We look, first of all, I would look, where is it vibrating, right? This person that's, or this thing that's happened, where is it? Is it in here, is it in there? You know, and I just vibrate with it, literally, rather than adding thought to it, just vibrate with it. And then, to whom is this arising? And you look, and what happens is, you know, you can't find anything, you know, but you have to look. And then that sort of fades away, and there's a stillness comes, and then there's a sense of, if I say think to yourself, then it's like adding thought, but it's more of having a sense of I am. So maybe even you just say it to yourself once. It's like a seed thought, but you don't repeat it, not repeating it like a mantra. I am. And first of all, even just with I. And then there's just a beautiful consciousness of everything, consciousness of, you know, the heat of you on your bed or settee or birds, anything that's happening, whatever's happening in the body, whatever's happening. It's just, you're turning the mind off, really, and you're just putting it all into what's going on right now, this moment. Because it's all right saying to people, well, the whole secret of life is found in this moment. That's true. You can't beat that it's now. Now is the only time. Now is the only thing. That's right. But how do you get to the now? Well, the real way is that we look in and see, is there anybody that's obstructing the now? So we start with I. What is I? The idea of this is that we eventually see that what I is consciousness. It's not the personality that we thought it was. We have been mixing the idea of I with the idea of a body and a personality. But underlying that is pure being, and that's what we get into when we're doing that.
But don't you think the experiences you had in the past, the awakening experiences, gave you some kind of reference point of who you were?
Do you know, that is a really good question, that. And I think that even if I hadn't had that at all, you absolutely don't need, this is the value to me of doing this self-inquiry, it doesn't matter at all whether you've had this awakening or not, whether you've ever done any meditation or not, except from the point of view that you've got a better chance of being still for longer at first. Otherwise it might, and this is absolutely fine, if you've never meditated before, it might just be short moments of just presence. You know, a very easy thing to do is that your mind's very busy, but you're washing up at the time, and you just, the minute that you notice it, because you become the observer by doing this, then you literally just look down at your hands. So you look down at your hands at what they're doing, and you're just doing what you're doing. So for a minute, second, you're switching off. And what starts to happen with either these long contemplations, that just because I just enjoy doing them, I mean, to be quite honest, if I didn't have to walk the dog, I'd just be sitting in this kind of spaciousness forever. You know, I'm blessed that I have a dog, that I have to go out and walk the dog. But what I'm trying to say is this has come about through doing the self-inquiry. There starts to be a wonderful switch, and it starts to happen automatically. This is the beauty of it, is that at first, you know, there's lots of thoughts with the occasional bit of presence. But then, after a while of this constant practice. It sounds like such an effort, but yes, maybe you have to put a little bit of effort in at first. But then there's a switch over, and then there's presence dominance, and thoughts are just in the background. I love what Mooji says. He says, imagine that you're a stingray, that's your being, a big stingray, and there's lots of little fishes, and they're all having a little nibble and tickling you all the way around, but it's not stopping you being a stingray. It's not interfering with your stingrayness, you know. So your being, there's always going to be little thoughts nattering, and we just welcome them, we just allow them to be there. There's really nothing that we have to, there's nothing that we have to do to stop having personal experience. We can't stop having personal experience. Things happen, and if they are upsetting things, somebody dies, something happens that we're fond of, there's, you know, we might miss them. I mean, you know, there might be sorrow. You know, somebody told me that something happened to my dog. I'd be very sorry. I mean, these things happen. We're not talking about trying to attain a mind or of any that doesn't have this in it. It's just that when there's enough a prominence of being, of what you are, a prominence and a dominance of that the sense of that is there because you've looked into it, you've inquired into it, and you've found it, then everything comes back to that rather than everything coming to thought. It's a switch over.
So what you say is, if you dedicate yourself to inquiry and you stay with this I am, there is the point where a shift happens from thought dominance to presence.
Yes, and I'll tell you something, there's only one thing that would stop anybody having this, and it's simply one thing, but it's very important. It's not wanting it enough. Because many people come to teachers and everything and say, but I want it, you know, why is it not happening? But they don't want it enough. I can't, I'm going to try and explain this. My need to see this completely was like an intense laser beam or a flaming sword. Everything else stopped mattering, and it won't ever matter to me again. And this is to anybody that does this. I don't look forward to things, and people can hear that and think, oh, how boring. No, it's great. Because if you spend your time looking forward, say, to an event or a friend's wedding or whatever, well, first of all, you are before the moment, so you're building up a false expectation of the moment, and then you are in the moment, and then you're behind the moment. It's finished, it's gone. It's like the world doesn't offer me anything else. There's nothing I want from the world anymore. I used to think, well, yes, I pretty much got that, but really I'd love to have a loving relationship. That's gone. If one arose and it was right, great. But that needing that, or needing anything to be other than it is, that's what I've found is just completely gone. But it had gone before the self-inquiry, and the self-inquiry made it sharper. So
can I just come in with a question, because that's interesting. If all the motivation is gone, let's say for life,
for the world, for the external, the external things,
how does one survive?
Well, beautifully, actually, because you're not encumbered with expectation of anybody. For instance, there was I don't know when it was. It's just an example. It was last year sometime, and a friend and I were going to go on a holiday in Cornwall. I think we were going to go, and then at the last minute she said she couldn't go, and I said, "Oh, okay," and she says, "Well, what do you mean, okay?" And I said, "Well, so we're not going now." And so she said, "Well, aren't you disappointed?" If it was the other way around, she said, "I'd be really disappointed." And I thought, Well, it was a nice idea. The idea of going, you know, was a nice idea, but now it's not happening, so something else will happen, something will replace that for both of us, you know. And then she just went, oh, you know, it's sort of like to be let off so easy kind of thing.
She was disappointed by you.
She was disappointed that I wasn't disappointed.
You didn't make a drama.
Yeah, but my purpose here is not, which I felt I misconstrued last time. It's not for me to sit here and say, oh, isn't this lovely for me? You know, I don't need these things, and you, well, it'll either happen or it won't, but you can't make it happen. I mean, that is a terrible. Can you imagine being, which is just pure love and including everything and everybody? Can you imagine that truth would have it that some people see this freedom and other people don't? How could it be like that? That means we're putting in, even into the spiritual realm, the haves and have-nots. Well, we have enough of that in the imagined world, don't we? But to think that that could really be, it's just, you know, I mean, and then you have people saying, well, I know that I don't know anything now. That's another biggie. I don't know anything now, because that sounds really good to say I do. And they probably believe it, because I used to believe it. Oh, I don't know anything. But there's really realising that you really don't. Like I was watching in my garden yesterday, a bird I'd never seen before. Not in North Yorkshire. Which anyway, it's a lovely bird, yellow with bright red things on. Don't know what they're called. I'm not a bird watcher, but I just thought, gosh, it's like a tropical bird in my garden. And then it played with the squirrel, and I thought, oh my gosh, you know, and I thought, you know, it just like got me. It was so humbling, because I thought, yeah, but a second ago you didn't know that. A second ago you didn't. A second ago I didn't even know what I would say. A second ago, you don't know what you were going to say. It's totally humbling living this life. So to go the opposite way and say, but I see this, but you can't, unless it happens by grace, you know, it's just,
yeah, but
it's not right.
But we really don't know.
We don't.
What happens in the next moment?
We don't. But
Yeah.
some people somehow think that they do. Or there's a double standard about, no, I really don't, but I think I do. But I don't know, this self-inquiry, you know, I mean, people must be laughing when they watch this, because I'm at the bottom of the pile here, because so many people have done years of self-inquiry, and I've gone the other way round. I had all these awakenings, I went this non-duality route, and then I realised that it can't be the way that it is sometimes described, shall I put it like that, and that self-inquiry gets rid of all the, can I say, shit that you're carrying. You know, you have to look. When you look, there's an awful lot of peace and spaciousness, but then. Now, this is not my expression, because Mooji says this. He says that more gets burped out. Now, that's true. Then you see more stuff that you were carrying. I mean, how would I be able to see what I was like a few years ago if I hadn't been looking? You might have been able to see it, but I couldn't see it. I was still deluded, you know. And I feel that even though I had these awakenings, which showed me the truth of how things were, I was deluded by some of the stuff that came after. And I listened to too many non-duality teachers, actually. I wish well, I don't wish it would be any other way than it is, because I love the way it is now. I love being able to say truthfully to people, if you want this enough, that's the only thing. To enter the kingdom of God, you have to have the key. The key is that you want it more than anything. That nothing of the world matters to you as much as this, seeing what you are, you know. And then it goes even beyond that, you know, even beyond that, because...
Well, you need to be ready to jump off the cliff.
Yes, you have. And you know, it doesn't mean getting rid of your car and your iPhone or whatever. It just means getting rid of the addiction to any of that, really. Nobody, nothing will take anything from you. But, you know, in the Bible it said, what profiteth a man if he gains the whole world but loses his soul? And I think that phrase was quite key to me in this non-duality movement. I thought, well, you might think that you see it, but if there's no heart there, if the love and the compassion and the aliveness isn't there, this won't really translate to anybody as anything that is real, because I've never felt so much love and compassion. Honestly, it goes deep, and people might see this and think, oh, there's that woman again talking a load of rubbish, and probably most of it's right. But one thing that I can honestly say is that the love and the compassion that's here has come, thank God, from seeing what it really is to really be no one. It's like, even as I'm saying it, I think, well, who is the I that's speaking now? Well, we have to use words, to sort of put this across, but how it feels is that there's just a space, like a huge space behind me, which is trying to make a leap to jump in, to put it into words, and so I don't know if I'm being very clear. But,
so would you say, Mandi, you are free? Do you feel free now?
This is how I feel. I don't want to say any words like liberation, enlightenment, even freedom. I can only say it like this: there is a huge freedom, and it's the ability. Well, not ability. That's the wrong word. But it's anyway, for want of a better word, it's that whatever happens in life, whatever it is, however deeply unpleasant it is, it's all perfect the way it is. Now, that used to be an intellectual idea. It's a very spiritual idea. Oh, it must have been meant. Oh, it must be perfect. But there's beyond these words that we say, these cliches and platitudes, there has to be a very, very deep understanding of what that is. Mm-hmm. And through this scraping away and hollowing out of this idea of whatever, I thought I was.
Of your structures and conditioning.
Conditioning, that's the word.
Yeah.
And there's just... then there is that absolute seeing that whatever happens in any moment is just exactly right. So what starts to happen is there's like a more in-tuneness in life. So life is easier, and it feels there's an inner joy. There's a bank of peace that nothing can ever, it's unshakable,
And there must be a deep trust.
Yes, exactly, because that goes hand in hand with it. There's an absolute trust. And there's a feeling of love being poured on you from something that you can't see, It's
from
just
yourself.
Well, that's it, because it's really I am seeing
there is
itself.
Not only yourself.
That's it. There's no other, is there? That's absolutely exactly. So that's lovely. But it doesn't make me feel, and this is the difference, you see, oh, right, I've got it. This idea that we've got it, and it's all fallen away now, that's it. That is not how it is, because in the expression of this, there is not exactly a ripening. There can't be a ripening of what I already am, because that's there. But there's a ripening of the recognition. See, all this is about recognising what you truly are, or what you are truly not. Yeah. I think we were sort of saying about the difference between somebody who's talking like this and a master, So there's no way I am a master, or, well, I am a master and you are a master, but you know what I mean?
So what's the difference between somebody who...
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about that, and the difference in terms of how we look at a master or a guru. You see, just going back to this thing of gurus, I also was very rude about gurus, having not really ever met one or listened to one. And I've got a quite rude poem about
I know, we will read it
Shall we
afterwards.
read it? Maybe we should read it now, just before I go on.
Okay, so we have two options. I hold the book here.
Oh, I know, look, my eyesight's got longer and longer.
Or you try my glasses.
Oh, yes, glasses. I never thought of that. Hang on. Oh, yes, here we are. Oh, to be a guru, now that April's here, and there's a picture of my dog Howard there.
Yeah.
TV or not TV? That is the question. Since being a guru is now my profession, my life must reflect transcendental expression. Now that enlightenment is in my possession. So I'll have to watch X Factor at my discretion and lose Coronation Street in the recession and no longer watch films with sex or aggression. Oh no, it's all starting to feel like suppression. But I think I'm learning a valuable lesson. Liberation's not up to my first impression. In fact, it's giving me indigestion. I really don't feel as I thought I might. So I'll just see what's on TV tonight.
Brilliant. You have a few poems like that in this book, and I just...
But it was a bit disparaging about gurus. And really, a guru means removal of ignorance.
Yes.
And I was full of ignorance, you know. I mean, there are there's bits in that book that I like, and there's bits in that book that, you know, when you write a book and it's years later on this kind of subject, you really wish you hadn't said it. And one of the main things that I've said in there is that, you know, nobody, you can't be taught it. Or, you see, this is another thing that I have heard some non-duality teachers say, and I have said it. You can't be taught it because that's who you are.
Well, it happens through grace. The realization happens through grace.
Well, and it does sometimes, but it's very, very, very occasional. So that's not going to help anybody, is it? And that's another thing. Oh, well, we're not here to help anybody. How can I help anybody? This is the thing. We need only guidance, and we need people like Muji, whoever you choose, who are great, eloquent speakers and adept at removing the ignorance so that we can recognise what we are. It's all about, nobody can teach you to be who you are, but they can help you recognise what you are and what you are not. So this training is very important. And to think that you are above and beyond needing that, it's just the height of arrogance, really, as far as I can see. And being humble is a lovely thing. That's where grace can get in, and it is very humbling to see how much you need whoever that grace has picked for you, if you like, to help you see the pitfalls of what the mind can do. And so a guru.
Where do you see yourself right now?
Sorry, say that again.
Where do you see yourself right now?
Well, right here.
Yeah, but yeah. Can you say more about your experience? How do you live your life now from the shift, from their perspective? Did something change in the way you perceive life, in the way you live life?
Well, I think it was just sort of going back to what I was saying before, that, you know, needing anything to be other than it is. Really, that says it in one go, you know.
You're centered more in the moment.
Yes, life is sort of lived from presence. And stories come up. And I have never met anybody where this is not true. And I really wouldn't believe anybody, even anybody that said, oh, it's fallen away in one, because we are living a human experience. You know, Ramana, now I know it was either Ramana or Papaji, but what they said was, be vigilant to the last breath. So it doesn't mean that you have to watch your thoughts and put so much heaviness on being the observer, watching yourself, being the witness all the time. No. When the inquiry has gone on deep enough, eventually the stick that stirs it, the I am stick that you're always coming back to, I am, that even starts to melt away. And there's just an automatic seeing of the stories as they arise, and if you get locked into them. So something can arise, and there's rather than you having to think, well, rather than me having to think, you know, I must not get locked into that. Oh, can bring it back to presence. But I did have to do a lot of that at first. But then, as I said before, there's a switch over, and what starts to happen, there's enough presence there to automatically see that. So it's like the stories are seen automatically. They don't stop coming up. You know, like he was saying, to your last breath, stories that you could get pulled into, you know, do come up. And I think everybody can relax now. You know, everything, oh, right, I thought it was about getting rid of thought and constantly witnessing. It's not about doing that, but thought is always going to be there. And thought, when we employ it, you know, to use it to do a timetable or whatever we need, that's fantastic. It just gets out of hand. But the inquiry is what turns the switch around.
I understand.
You see, so that there's this presence dominance rather than thought dominance, and then and then life is lived with yes, with much more freedom. Yeah,
Sure.
but it's just lovely. Everybody can do it. But I was saying there was no practice you can do, or you can't do this. Well, that yes, I completely know that's different. But I also know that whereas this seeing will ripen, and as you know, and everything, and for others before me, far beyond you know, they've been seeing it for years. You know. What happens is there's something that's locked in that's permanent, and that's your being, and so that seeing of being, that knowing what you are, that expression of that can't change. But where I was before, that was subject to change. So how was it subject to change? It was because it was from a series of awakenings where things fell away, but not permanently, because I hadn't looked deep enough. This is the difference, you see. So I don't expect to be coming back in another 4 years, even if I was divinely invited, to be saying, well, I've changed again. Because it's like the root has been exposed. It's been sorted at the root. Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
I hadn't seen it before, but it was rootless. But I do see that in other people that speak about this as well. And it, not what I'm saying today, but the way that I used to speak. Because you can feel it sometimes. There's that lack of compassion. There's that dead faces, you know.
And what feedback do you have when you talk about that?
Well, I've only done one. I've done a little video, a tiny little video, which is called "Yes, There Is Something You Can Do." That's what I called it. And I was thinking, oh dear, I wonder what the onslaught's going to be. But that's only been out a few weeks, really. Just a little video on YouTube. But you know, I've had some lovely things, actually. I was really unprepared for, first of all, anybody being in the least bit interested, because I'm not really very well known, so I didn't think anybody much would kind of, you know, watch it. But the emails that I have had was, thank you, Mandi, you know, for, yes, that's such a relief. It's more like, oh, what a relief, you know. But we can't underestimate one thing, and that is how much you want it. So it's not something you can, I don't feel, just dip into 8 minutes or 10 minutes every so often.
Well, it needs to be your life.
It needs to be. I mean, well, I just got addicted to it. You tend to. It's the peace and the ever deepening of it, you know. So, you know, but I don't want to. I mean, I spent about, you know, like an hour and a half in the morning, an hour and a half in late evening, and maybe in the middle of the day, and constant. Oh, and I was also reading lots of Ramana Maharshi texts, everything. I mean, for 6 months, I was sort of living like a monk, you know, monkess, or a monkey, and I was just constantly studying it and doing deep contemplation.
Yeah.
So. You know,
and the good thing is that we all can do that.
Yes,
as you say.
Absolutely, if you want it enough.
Yeah.
It's spending the time.
And I really appreciate your honesty with that, and coming out and say, hey, I changed my mind, and My experience is different.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, before, I think it was in the mind. That's the point.
Yeah,
It was seeing through the mind. But
Yeah.
these awakenings, they don't always mean that then you live, it's not liberation.
Yeah.
It's momentary liberation. And as I say, it can get in the way.
Yes.
But I wanted to say that because so many people have said, well, if I don't have a car crash, if I don't have a big drama, how am I ever going to see it? No, those things can help, but also they're in a way irrelevant because you don't need them if you look. Yeah. And it's not a person that's looking, it's consciousness looking. And you see that very quickly. It might start with the thought, I'm looking. But that disappears, something, and consciousness itself. When consciousness sees you looking for itself, it's like you're drawing the curtains a little bit and the light's coming in, but it sees you looking, it sees itself looking, and then pulls the curtains all the way. It wants to help, so you're not on your own with it, it wants to help. I mean, thoughts and stories, all the stories are like a massive, massive magnet. But, we're not a flimsy iron filing that can be pulled so easily by the magnet. We have the power to just drop these thoughts, the power to see through the stories and just keep coming back to I am, and then it's lovely. And then sometimes it's not lovely because stuff comes up, but it goes deeper and deeper, but
Yes.
that's true freedom because it's there for everyone.
Yes. Do you feel life is more flowing now?
Absolutely, in every way. Just in sort of little things, well, the little things like, I don't know, parking spaces or meeting the right person at the right time or something. But a lot of it, a lot of it sort of, yeah. But, I also get stuck in, stuff, something will come up. But well, I don't think I do get stuck anymore. It's seen too quickly. That's what it's done for me. It's sort of seen too quickly. So as soon as there's a tendency to get pulled, what I do is I look at that, though. I'm not afraid of it, anymore. Like, because if you're afraid of it, it keeps coming back and back. That's what suppression is. But it's to just really look. Not so much at the thoughts, but the feeling of what's underlying that. To whom is that arising?
Yeah.
And then he's scraping it out, scraping more of...
So do you feel you are a better, more integrated human being?
I suppose so, yes.
Well, we are human beings.
It's balance, isn't it? It's about being balanced, yes. I know that what comes out is more... it's just incredibly deep, compassionate and welcoming.
Yeah.
Whatever comes, good or bad, it's welcomed, it's embraced.
Yes.
Because it's there, so it must be right. Anything that's there is right, however horrible as well, But when you have that seeing of, well, even if it's horrible, I welcome it. Guess what? Hardly anything horrible happens in that way. There's a lot less of it. Instead of life being like that, it kind of goes till it's sort of, it's just more... Yeah.
The horrible thing is always only what the mind makes out of.
Exactly, that's a good point, because it's not... those, even the judgments, this is horrible, this is nice, this is horrible, even they're not there, because there's just, well, that's what's happening. Yeah.
Well, I guess we have to finish.
I've gone on again.
No, it was interesting, Mandi, and we thank you for coming back. And,
thank you for having me back.
And thank you for watching Conscious TV, and we see you again
And thank
soon.
you for Conscious TV, because I think it's fantastic, because it lets all these points of views be seen, and it's I think it's a vital thing, it's a beautiful thing. So, I deeply thank you and Ian for actually creating it and doing it, and long may it continue, because then people can make their own mind up,
Yeah. Everybody has a different path.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's no one better than the other.
No, impossible.
And it's all consciousness trying to wake up itself. Yes.
It's all having a good laugh and a good game. Yeah.
Thank you. Goodbye.